Jimmy Kimmel never thought he'd see the day when his own voice was taken off the air. But last week, the unthinkable happened. His late-night show was suddenly yanked from television, his future put on pause, and millions of fans left asking, was this the end of Jimmy Kimmel Live? What followed was a whirlwind of tears, backlash, and one of the most emotional monologues of his entire career. On September 17, ABC made the stunning decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel Live indefinitely. The move came just days after Kimmel made controversial remarks about the tragic murder of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk. Within hours, broadcasting giants Nexstar and Sinclair declared they would not air the show, a move that rattled the late-night world. For fans, it was like watching the plug being pulled on one of TV's most outspoken hosts. Many wondered if this was the moment Jimmy Kimmel's two-decade career had finally hit a wall. But as it turned out, the story was only beginning. Just 6 days later, ABC reversed course. On September 23, Jimmy Kimmel walked back onto the stage to thunderous applause and a standing ovation. The night began with laughter, Kimmel and Guillermo dressed in ridiculous costumes, poking fun at the chaos of the past week. But quickly, the tone shifted. Kimmel's voice cracked as he thanked his audience, admitting he'd been overwhelmed by the flood of messages and support. In that moment, the jokes stopped, and the raw emotion of a comedian stripped of his stage became impossible to ignore. Kimmel didn't stand alone. The late-night community rallied around him, with Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, John Oliver, and even Jay Leno all reaching out in solidarity. But the shock came from the other side of the aisle. Conservative figures like Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, Ted Cruz, and even Senate leaders like Mitch McConnell defended Kimmel's right to speak freely, despite despising his politics. Kimmel himself admitted he never expected to hear words of support from those voices. For once, Hollywood and Washington found themselves oddly united around the idea of free speech. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. With visible tears, Kimmel addressed the very comments that sparked his suspension. He insisted he never meant to mock the tragedy of Charlie Kirk's murder, calling it horrible and monstrous. He reminded viewers that he had sent condolences to the family and condemned the violence from day one. His words, he admitted, may have been unclear, or worse, ill-timed. And while he stood by his intentions, he understood why some felt hurt. That mix of apology, vulnerability, and defiance painted Kimmel not as a comic throwing barbs, but as a man grappling with the weight of his own platform. But the controversy didn't end there. Former President Donald Trump wasted no time piling on, mocking Kimmel as fired for lack of talent and celebrating his absence from TV. Kimmel, in turn, used his return to fire back, warning that government attempts to silence comedians aren't just personal, they're anti-American. He drew comparisons to Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, and Howard Stern, legends who pushed boundaries and faced censorship of their own. For Kimmel, this wasn't just about one suspension. It was about a president openly cheering on the silencing of voices that dared to criticize him. And behind the scenes, the fight only grew messier. Federal Communications Commission Chairman Brendan Carr praised Sinclair and Nexstar for refusing to air Kimmel's show. Sinclair even issued demands, an on-air apology to the Kirk family and a donation to Kirk's nonprofit. Meanwhile, Nexstar announced a $6 billion merger that could give it control of TV access in 80% of American homes, despite current laws capping it at 39%. For Kimmel, it was proof that this battle wasn't just about one comedian, it was about the balance of power in America's media, and who gets to decide what voices are heard. At the heart of it all, Kimmel made one thing clear: if we don't have free speech, we don't have a free country. He tied his fight to a much larger warning about press freedom, pointing out reports that the Pentagon was quietly asking journalists to sign pledges restricting what they could cover. His voice broke as he invoked Walter Cronkite, joking that the legendary newsman must be spinning in his grave. For viewers, it was a jarring reminder: this wasn't just late-night comedy anymore. It was a national conversation about how fragile free expression has become. By the end of his monologue, Jimmy Kimmel admitted he never imagined he'd be here, suspended, scrutinized, and fighting for the right to speak. But as the applause filled the studio, one question lingered far beyond the walls of ABC: was Kimmel simply a comedian who went too far, or is he the latest voice caught in America's escalating war on free speech?